Oh yeah, we were on the picture the way things are supposed to be in our head, the way we envision them, and those visions, and even like in the disagreement that I was talking about, each of you had a vision in your head of the way, whatever the subject was, the way it's supposed to be. And your disagreement caused conflict, and it's really that basic. And it's not. It doesn't have anything to do with who's right and who's wrong. I'm not assigning that at all. I usually find the truth usually lies in the middle, especially when you're talking about the news media. That everybody has an agenda, but um, it's just the vision of the way that you think things are supposed to be, and they cause when they don't work out that way. And the amazing thing about is that we have this expectation that everything should be perfect, and it fascinates me, and I'm the same way. It's um, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't like traffic. I got out in traffic the other day and I was complaining about traffic, and then I realized I'm trying to be mindful. I realize I'm human like everybody else. Traffic's driving me nuts. I need to get where I was going, but then I realized, how can I drive somewhere and not expect to incur traffic? But no, I have this vision. Oh, I'm just going to drive down to where I'm going, and it's going to take me this long, and I should be unimpeded. And so that vision in my head, didn't work out the way I wanted. It caused me suffering. It's a very simple concept. Um, and with the all day long, this is what awareness is about. All day long, we live rehashing the past. We're thinking about what happened. We're thinking about what we could have done differently, or we're worried about the future, what we can do different. Um, and we talked about that last week. That living in the past is causes depression, and living in the future causes anxiety. It's a very oversimplified definition, but it's pretty accurate. And I think Lao Tzu actually said that if you're depressed, you're living in the past, and if you're anxious, you're living in the future. But he also said if you're at peace, you're living in the present, which is mindfulness, what we're talking about, because we understand we're mindful that disagreements are differences of opinion, of the visions, the way they think things should be. That we're mindful that we are going to incur traffic when we're driving. Um, so in the last couple of weeks, we've talked a lot about pain and depression in a variety of ways. And even if we didn't speak about it directly, it was indirectly, because that's why we're here, because we share that common bond. But tonight I want to talk a little bit more about anxiety. Now, there's a really fuzzy line between those two, um, and I don't want to get into technical definitions. Um, it's really not important, but I do want to define anxiety. And the definition of anxiety is intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. Pretty clear. Okay, but it goes on to say it's often accompanied by increased heart rate, rapid breathing, sweating, and fatigue. Okay, so again, in the definition of alone of anxiety, what we talked about in the previous weeks, in the definition alone, it points out how the brain creates physical symptoms. So let me read it to you again. Intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. So the brain is manufacturing or exacerbating or dealing with, whatever, however you want to put it, excessive and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. Then the second half is often accompanied by increased heart rate, rapid breathing, swearing, and fatigue. Okay. So anxiety is a condition created by the brain. It's that has physical symptoms, and it's created by the brain. So we talked about that. We talked about with in the first couple of weeks about fear being induced. I think I used. I made an analogy about being attacked in Walmart by a saber-tooth tiger, just to be ridiculous. But um, it was just to show you that real threats, uh, and the anxiety that I'm sorry, I can't think of the word I want to use. They initiate the same bodily functions, the same symptoms. Okay, but in anxiety, it's all mental. The physical threat is not real, and that's what's important to remember. Okay, the physical symptoms experienced are only a result of the mind's activity, and it's real. I know it's really hard to comprehend that, and even for all of us who've been here the last couple of weeks, and we're beginning to understand it, but it's really a difficult concept to grasp, um, especially for those of us who have experienced anxiety. This is where I was talking about earlier, just a few minutes ago, when you talk about like the word perspective, and you talk about anxiety and it being created by the brain. Some people take serious offense to that, and because anxiety is very real. It's very real, and when you tell people that's created by the brain, it almost makes it sound like it's not real. Um, and I don't mean that at all. Anxiety is very real. It is absolutely very real. It can be suffocating, but when we're looking from a distance, um, we can see that that we choose to worry. Okay, and notice I said choose, and we've talked about that too. That we choose to worry by, and um, so every day we're either choosing or either consciously or subconsciously which thoughts to cling to, which to honor, and which to believe. So when we're making subconscious choices to cling to these thoughts of the worry that creates the anxiety, creates a physical symptom. That's what the point I'm trying to get across. I'm not being very eloquent this evening. I know it's been a long day, not as long as last week. Last week I was really tired, but so when we choose to worry, this is the irony. When we choose to worry, we are actually invoking our power of visualization. So we've gone the last couple of weeks, just like smelling and tasting the orange a few weeks ago. Right? By now you have a glimpse of how powerful your mind is, and we visualize the orange. You could taste it, you could smell it. I just did this with my nephew the other day. He's 16, just turned 16. He was blown away. And I told him, I said, your mind's more powerful than you can even begin to conceptualize at this point. And so when we worry, we're creating this worrisome scenario in our head and we're envisioning it and we're playing it out. And so the lizard brain isn't smart enough to know whether it's real or not. And so it activates the fight or flight system. Absolutely. The stopping is the hard part. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that tonight. Okay. So I need you to understand if it sounds like most of you have experienced anxiety or panic attacks, and if you haven't had the anxiety, maybe you've been on the depression side of things. Now, depression is a little more complicated. There are brain chemicals involved. I am not a doctor, and I've told you that before. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not even a trained psychologist, so I don't want to infringe on any professional areas by any stretch of the imagination. But depression has also been shown to be improved with mindfulness and meditation for the same reason. Um, you are so powerful that if you've had anxiety that we're talking about, you are so powerful you created it, and that's mind that's mind boggling. And unfortunately, if we're unaware, which I was, and at times I still am, I guess, it's a human condition. When we're unaware, we're like Mickey Mouse in the Sorcerer's Apprentice when he puts on the master's sorcerer's hat, and he he had no idea what he was doing. He had all this power, had no, and just thought he knew what he was doing, and he made all this stuff happen, but he really had no control. And I think that's exactly what we do. We're dealing with more power than we can even begin to comprehend, and we're made we're we're waving a magical wand around like we've been drinking. Um, so every um, hold on, that was from last week. I got to take that note out of there. So um, okay, so the Serenity Prayer is a prayer that is used through a lot of drug and alcohol recovery, and not just drug and alcohol recovery, just the 12-step program in general. And I love the 12-step program, and I'm actually um, writing a book about the 12-step recovery program. But um, I'm writing two books actually. But so the Serenity Prayer comes into play. Okay, and the Serenity Prayer says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay. And we talked for several weeks, not everything is controllable, but how we respond to it is. Okay. And this is how we're going to deal with this is how to approach the anxiety from the perspective standpoint. The knowing what is controllable and what isn't is a huge piece to the puzzle. Okay. So what what I want to do right now is I want to challenge you. I want someone. This is a trick question. I'm going to tell you right now, but take a moment and think about this. I want someone to name one thing that worry fixed, one problem that worry actually fixed. And I don't mean examining a problem and applying various solutions. I don't mean that at all. I mean worrying. I don't mean I wonder if we could do this or that. I mean, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Why is this happening to me? Etc. Etc. I mean, good old fashioned anxiety laden worry. What does it fix? Let's go to the phones. There's a little bit of a delay. So it's a trick question. I told you that. Because the answer is nothing. Not, it doesn't fix anything. It never has fixed anything. It never will fix anything. All all worrying does is steals your energy. It not only steals your thoughts and your time that you could actually be finding a solution, but it also, because it creates anxiety and it creates these physical symptoms, if you don't think that your heart rate increasing and the sweating, if you don't think all of that takes energy that you need for other parts of your day, well, then I don't know what. But it steals your energy. Okay. You just we just waste so much time and energy rehashing unnecessary garbage in our heads. You know, everything that happened, we talked about this the other everything that's happened in your life, good or bad, puts you right here, right now. I just told you I watched the last episode of Game of Thrones. And Brandon Stark said, I'm sorry, I wasn't there to protect you. And he said, you were right where you needed to be the entire time. That's what we were talking about, the butterfly effect. Anything changes, your whole life is completely different. So why spend time worrying about decisions you could have made, what you could have done differently, what you should have done? If you done differently, then you wouldn't be worrying about that. You'd be worrying about something else. Okay. And when it comes to anxiety, when we're looking ahead to the future, whatever it is, it probably isn't going to kill you. In some rare instances, that may actually be the case. I mean, I'm well aware that God forbid. Okay. But even if it is the case, if it kills you, then me instantly, then it's over. You know, you have nothing to worry about. If it's going to kill you slower, you have two options. You can either worry the rest of the time you have left, or you can realize you can't do anything about it and celebrate and enjoy the rest of the time you have. I, so there is no value in worry. There none. It doesn't. It doesn't exist. There's no argument. And I've had people try to argue. There is no argument. Worrying doesn't solve anything. All it does is steal your energy. Okay, it's very simple. So I want to tell you a story. I debated whether to tell you this story. It's pretty heavy, um, but I gave it a lot of thought. So when I was a firefighter in about 2008, I went on a run with a man who had hung himself in his garage, and it was pretty. Well, I don't even need to say that it was a terrible scene. That's a foregone conclusion. He was in his early to mid 40s, and he was holding a foreclosure letter in his hand. He, I was going to describe how you think if he hung himself, he probably wasn't holding anything, but he was. I won't describe the scene, but just trust me, he was. And that kind of thing. When you're as first responders, that kind of thing, it's pretty heavy. Well, come to find out, this person was actually a relative of a friend of the family. So I didn't know this person, um, but they were a relative of the friend of the family, and we found out after that this was like 2008. So because of the economy, this is when the economy crashed. He lost his job, and then his wife left him. And that day he had gotten the foreclosure notice that they were going to foreclose on his house, and he hung himself. Now, it's easy right now for all of us to sit here and understand how awful that is. That there was to look back, 10, 11 years backwards, and think about how different his life could have been today. That the whole there's nothing worth that. There's nothing worth taking your own life. Okay, we can clearly see that here, but he couldn't see that far. His anxiety and his depression wouldn't let him. He was focusing on the wrong things. He had no awareness. He had no perspective. He was focusing on the wrong things. And it's easy for me to say. I get that. But we can all agree that it wasn't worth him taking his own life. So, contemplating that story I just told you, I want to ask you if you had a chance to talk to this person before this happened, knowing what you know now, what would you tell him? What what are the important things that you would feel compelled to make sure that he knew, so he didn't make such a rash decision based on his thoughts and what was going through his head at the time? It's really a rhetorical question, and there's a delay. I don't know if anyone's typing anything, but really, it's just something I want you to think about, because whatever it is right now that you would think about telling him to prevent him from making such a rash decision, from accepting so much pain into his life, and making the choice. He accepted it. He chose to listen to the negativity in his brain, and to allow that to affect him so much to take his life. Whatever you would tell him is what you should start telling yourself. And I mean, it's it. There are things to live for. There are blessings. It doesn't matter how bad. Right. Everything, you can figure it out. Everything. Why? Because there are blessings there are blessings in his life he didn't see. There were blessings to come. He was at his low point. You know what the beauty about being at the low point of your life is? That it has to get better. And I've been there a couple times. Yeah. Is this going to matter in 10 years? Absolutely. That's right. These are the things that we need to tell ourselves when we're dealing with this anxiety. Now, focus being on grateful. We talk about gratitude. Gratitude will help with your perspective so much, so much. Um, I planted a seed in my son's heads when we all moved to Florida. They decided to move down after we did, and I told them, I said, we have our problems down here. We were all from up north, and then we moved down to Florida. And I said, we have our problems down here. I said, but having 355 days of sunshine sure makes them a lot easier to swallow. Well, they didn't realize it, but I was programming them. I was programming their happiness right then and there, giving them that perspective. I guess I got off on a tangent there, but it's gratitude. If I help them be grateful for living in a place where it's warm, because we're not cold people. We're just not. And if I planted that seed and they had the gratitude for the sunshine and living in a place where it's warm, then maybe when things are bad, at some point they'll still have that gratitude and it'll take the edge off. And I believe that. I believe that with everything I have, because I live it on a daily basis. Okay. So that's what we're here for, our perspective. Change your perspective, change your life. We've already discussed that. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but it's that important, and it applies to what we're going to talk about here in a second. Okay, and it isn't that easy. We've already discussed that. It takes time. It takes practice. Okay, and we've already discussed that. Okay, so the evolution of this looks something like this. All right, we're clueless and asleep. We're like a pinball bouncing around in a pinball machine. For those of you who watched the video of the allegory of the cave, we're clueless. Okay, we're actually we're like a fish out of water, right? No real control, no real agenda, just no real agenda to the flopping, just flopping around. Okay, the fish isn't even smart enough to know what's going on. The fish knows something's wrong, but it doesn't know what. It's not smart enough. It isn't like the fish calculates on a plan or anything to flop its way back. It doesn't know what it's doing. It just knows it doesn't like where it is, and it just starts spazzing out and flopping all over the place. It's not flopping to intentionally flop over this way and flop around the pole and flop back into the water. It doesn't think that far. It's not going to flop out of the net and flop back across the deck and into the water. No, it just reacts and it starts flipping out, flailing all over the place. And being asleep is something like that. Don't be like a fish, which is what I did for the most of my adult life up until 15, 20 years ago. Be like an octopus. The only thing about an octopus is ridiculously smart and calculating. They are escape artists. They scheme and they plan. They've been known to flip latches, open cabinets or containers that they're in, like coolers or aquariums or whatever they're in. They can turn lids on jars. They're extremely intelligent, extremely calculated. But if an octopus just suddenly flipped out and started flopping around all over the place, he'd no doubt he'd make things worse, and he wouldn't be able to escape and get out and do what they were born to do. Okay, so now we're aware. You're not like a fish. You're aware that you have an extraordinary amount of power at your disposal, more than you ever even dreamed of. Okay. The flopping around like a fish, I hate to tell you this, it's really a victim mentality. And when I have this conversation with people, this will push some buttons. People get really hot about calling someone a victim. No one wants to be a victim. Okay. And I, if someone would have told me 20 years ago that I was playing the role of a victim, I would have lashed out in such a way that I would have lashed out to prove that's the opposite of what I was, which ironically would have been like a fish flopping around. I would have been trying to prove I would have been trying to prove so hard that I wasn't, that's exactly why. I would have been angry about it and probably violent, to be honest. Then the truth was to prove to myself that I wasn't as powerless as I felt internally, felt deep down. But I was a victim. I was just reacting all day. So that's what victims do when you're a victim. Um, you know, so we just go about reacting all day, and I was reacting all day, which meant someone else was making the decisions, and I was reacting to it. Okay, which is the whole flopping around like a fish, bouncing around like a pinball. The flopping makes it worse. That's being a victim. A victim, the definition of a victim is a person harmed, injured, or killed as a result of a crime, an accident, or other event or action. Okay, so when we're just allowing people to upset us, to make us angry, push our buttons. If someone's pushing your buttons and you react, then you're a victim. They push your buttons and you had to react. They program the code to get you to flip out, flop around like a fish. And again, this isn't a soapbox. This is earned. I promise you. Okay, I live my life this way. We get to choose. And if you don't choose, if you're just reacting, we're like, well, they called me a name and I don't like that name. So now we got in a fist fight at Disneyland. I don't know if you saw there was a fist fight at Disneyland the other day, but it's being a victim, just allowing someone else to dictate your actions. Most of us just take whatever's dished out to us, and then we exacerbate the situation ourselves. And it's kind of like standing under a window and the window shatters, the glass falls down on you, breaks above us, rains down, no doubt cuts us a little bit. And then instead of moving away from the danger, we just lie down and roll around and then complain how bad it hurts. But I digress. Okay, we're becoming aware. We're understanding that that's what we're doing, and we're looking to move beyond that. This is where the liberation and the health comes in. But it's the hard part. Okay, we 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 become comfortable with what we know, and our familiarity overrides what we think we want. This is where the incongruence comes in that I've talked about before. That we think we want this, but deep down, this makes us comfortable because we know it. And so we repeat this behavior. Okay. So being aware doesn't mean that it stops. I think I think we're all 8 weeks in. I think we all can really agree that just because we're aware doesn't mean everything poof changes like that. No, this is where the hard part stops. This is what I think I told you in the first week. You better be ready because this is like taking an item out of the box. It doesn't go back in the box the way it came. I don't care how much time you spent trying to put the plastic back in and wrap it up and fold the corners down, and it doesn't go back in the box the way it came out. This is what awareness does. This is the hard part, but it's the part that's worth it. Okay, doesn't mean it stops it, but it means that it's happening. We're aware that it's happening. And to be quite honest, this is a cliche. It's a worn out cliche. You've heard it before, but it is true. This is the darkness just before dawn. This is when we're living a certain way and we're tired of living that way. And then we're aware, and now we're aware that we're living this way. And we're like, this really sucks. And I really don't, this is really heavy. I thought it was heavy before, but now I really just understand how heavy it is. That's when you get to start shedding the weight and it begins to get lighter. Okay. Knowing you're behaving in a in a specific way that isn't beneficial is a very rough acknowledgement. But I want to commend all of you who have gotten to that point because you are way ahead the rest of the population. Way ahead. Many people will go their whole lives and never get to this point. Okay. You got to trust the process. So, for example, we're aware, then something happens. Okay. So we're aware. We're aware right now. Something happens, it pushes your buttons, it triggers you, and then we panic and we flop around like a fish, maybe make things worse, and then it's over, and then we calm down, and then we're like, stupid, stupid, stupid. Hopefully, hopefully, hopefully not like that. I used to treat myself that way, and some of you probably do, but I'm trying to be funny, but it's really not. You know, self compassion is huge, um, but we need to be kind to ourselves, have self compassion, but we need to. The next step is really to use that with kindness and compassion to stop and analyze and be good to ourselves and say, hey, I probably could have handled that situation better. And it's a serenity prayer. I couldn't have handled. I can't control what this person does, and I can't control what was happening with here and what was happening here and what was happening to this person. But I can control what I do. I could have done this better. Okay. Be grateful that you recognize it. Don't be angry that you didn't stop it from happening. Be grateful that you've taken another step that now you recognize it. And then be even more grateful if you were able to use compassion and kindness with yourself to be able to have a nice conversation. Say, I think you probably would have been better off. Oh, thank you so much for. I mean, I don't say it out loud. I don't care. Talk in the mirror. I don't care. I don't care. The only people that are crazy are the people that are acting like they're not crazy. I mean, the rest of us, we all realize everybody's got their issues. Then use your visualization skills and see exactly how to handle it differently. Instead of using your visualization skills and your anxiety to worry about what happened and what you're going to do, this use it differently. Use it to envision how you're going to change your behavior, who you're going to be, who you want to become. And I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago about the basketball team that visualized their free throws. And I'm pretty sure we talked about that. Though they did a study, and they had basketball players that were shooting free throws, and they had a group that practiced regularly over a certain period of time, and they had a group that practiced mentally over a certain period of time. And then when they tested them, the group that practiced mentally consistently shot better than the other one. And they determined that because of the visualization, when the control group that actually visualized it, that they actually did it perfectly every time. They made all their shots. Their confidence went up. Their mechanics were great. They visualized their practice and they did better. Visualization is huge. It's important. So you're literally rewiring your brain. You're literally practicing your behavior without even being in the situation. Okay. It's why we talked about that before with my basketball players and with warriors and soldiers. And I mean, you have to practice. You practice, you get it down. Visualize with that. Practice your behavior within the situation. And then as your mind creeps in and starts telling you lies, your ego's a liar. Do what I call a manual override. Acknowledge right then and there, stop dead in its tracks and acknowledge that your mind is trying to prevent you from changing your behavior. Tell yourself this is the way you're going to do it from now on. This is who I want to be. Say it out loud if you have to. I don't care. And my advice to you, and I don't mean this. This sounds funny, and I don't mean it insulting. I don't mean it funny. I mean it legit. Okay. Act like you're explaining it to a 6-year-old. Break it down as simple as possible. Explain it as many times to yourself as you have to. It works. It's called a manual override. Do it. Don't try to ignore it. Don't fight it. Don't try to talk yourself out and think like I'm going to think good thoughts, during a bad situation. No, stop. Right, be aware. Stop right then and there, and call it out. No, we're not doing this anymore. Okay. Eventually, you'll start to recognize your behavior as it's happening. Instead of calming down and being like, "Oh, I should have acted differently," you'll be in the middle and be like, and all of a sudden you'll look around and be, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy." Now, your behavior may not still change right away. It's ingrained in you. It's a habit. So just be grateful you're catching it sooner. Do the same thing. Manual override. Whatever you need to manual override, just do it. Then you'll begin to recognize that it's happening. You'll stop flopping around so much like a fish. Then you'll catch the signs before it happens. Then you'll be able to make decisions to prevent it before it happens. Then you'll learn to avoid it altogether. It's an evolution, and it's coming. It's happening. And it's just a path. It takes practice. But you have the power to do it. And maybe you've experienced with other aspects of your life with learning new behaviors or doing something different. Maybe you just didn't identify it as a pattern or know that it was applicable to this. Okay. But you have this ability. Your mind is the most powerful weapon you have in your war for your happiness. We've talked about that before. Okay. So it really all ties in. Next week, we're going to talk about anger. And anxiety and anger are closely related. The emotion is obviously anger is a powerful emotion, but they're closely related. They're intertwined into our belief system, how we talk to ourselves, how we react to other people. It's the same concept, and the power of the mind is the cornerstone to reducing. And I don't even want to say controlling because there's no reason to control it. I mean, we're just going to let it go. There's no reason to control it. It's like I don't know, a rabid animal. There's no reason to put it in a pen and take care of it. Just let it go. Controlling takes too much energy. We're going to train ourselves to just let it go. When we let it go, we can stand back and we can look at it. Eventually, the goal into your life is to get to the point where something triggers you and you're able to stand back and go, wow. Just like you're watching one of those, like you're watching the fight at Disneyland on the internet. You're just like, wow. I had this conversation with my wife the other day about I can't believe the person I used to be. I look back and I just can't believe. And there was always the good parts of me were always there, but when you don't know how to cultivate them, you're just flopping around like a fish. Whatever comes out under the circumstances. You're a victim. So if I'm having a good day, I'm a good person. If I'm having a bad day, I'm a bad person. And I can't believe the person I used to be. And so the evolution is beautiful. It's amazing. It's liberating. So tonight's meditation is going to be not as directly related as most of them have been to what we learned tonight. Next week, I'm going to go into anger, and then I'm going to give you some breathing exercises, some tips for when you have anxiety and when you have anger. So my wish for you this week is to not have any anxiety or any anger until we can talk about some breathing techniques and trips. So don't have anxiety, don't have anger this week. You can do it next week when we go over that next week. But tonight I wanted to do a body scan. Now we did this a couple weeks ago, and everyone really enjoyed it. I love the body scan. So I'm going to read to you, walk you through, not read to you, but walk you through the body scan guided meditation that I put together. So let's meditate. Does anybody have any questions or want to say anything final before we start to do a meditation? Great. Thank you. I'm glad it's working. That's why I do this. It's a path to liberation and happiness. And sometimes I talk to people and they look at me like with a deer in the headlights. And I know that they're just not in a place to learn, pick it up. So, um, okay. All right. So the body scan, I didn't really tell you before. We've had enough awareness now, as and we talked about it enough. With the body scan, what we're doing here, the point of this is a mental and a physical healing thing. So this isn't just to put you to sleep to have you relax. This is increase your awareness. Okay. So this is to direct your attention, your awareness to the bottom of your foot or the back of your kneecap or your fingertip. It's to bring you into the now. So you're aware that you're sitting. It reduces anxiety. You're not worried about tomorrow. You're not worried about whatever bills you got to pay. You're not worried about this. You're not worried about that. You are sitting right there and you're aware that you're sitting there because you're paying attention to your body. You're being comfortable with yourself. And it's just simplistic awareness. It's not complicated. Okay. But there's a healing that comes with it, with the visualization, the power of the brain, the power that and they've proven. Uh, we talked about this in the very beginning, but I'm going to read in like week 1 or week 2. There is just constant medical experiments and scientific experiments that they are proving that through these body scans and through awareness of the body, that the brain has the power to initiate healing in the body. And that when we're talking some serious afflictions. They've done a lot of tests with cancer, with immunodeficiency. There's this is big stuff, and we're right on the cutting edge of. I don't know that we'll ever completely understand it, at least in my lifetime. But we're there. I mean, this is cutting edge. They're just starting to figure this out, but the results are phenomenal. Okay, so I wanted to tell you that as we go into the body scan. So you're not just, I'm not here just to put you to sleep, even though if you do go to sleep, you're relaxed and you needed to sleep. I want you to rest. It's healing in itself. But the body scan is to bring us into the now, to take us out of the past, to take us out of the future, to bring us right here where everything's perfect. Everything's perfect right now. You don't have to be anywhere. You don't have to do anything. It just is. Okay. So, all right. I'd like you to get comfortable, please. And the usual, if you're standing, feel free, take a seat, lie on your back, whatever works for you. If you choose to sit, make sure you're comfortable. Sit with your back straight, feet flat on the floor. If you're on the floor, you can cross your legs. Sometimes it helps to put a cushion or a blanket underneath your sit bones so you elevate it a little bit. When I sit on the floor, I have to do that. I don't bend very easily. But the most important thing is that you're comfortable, and make sure your hands are in a comfortable position, whatever that is, whether they're on your by your sides or on your knees, palms facing up, down, gently resting in your lap. You'll hear so many people. There's so many different ways people tell you to do it, and this and that, and those are all good. Those are all advanced. If you want to study something like that, I highly encourage it. But man, just be comfortable and meditate. That we overcome humans overcomplicate things so much. So just be comfortable. Okay. All right. So I would like for you to close your eyes. Notice your posture. Big on posture. Good posture is essential to preventing fatigue and potential injury, and it will help facilitate the flow of energy in the body. And I want you to begin by taking a long, slow, deep breath. Be sure to breathe in deeply through your nostrils and then exhale slowly under control through your mouth. Carefully and mindfully begin to bring your awareness within. Let's focus on the breath. As you continue to breathe, as you inhale, feel your chest expand. Really feel it. Really pay attention. Notice the sensations of how it feels when your chest expands and how it feels when your belly relaxes as you exhale. Continue to breathe for a few minutes, a couple breaths, and stay with these sensations as you inhale and exhale. If you should find yourself being distracted by external sounds, practice acknowledgement. Simply acknowledge what you've heard and gently, kindly, and compassionately bring your focus back inward and refocus on your breathing. It doesn't matter how many times it happens, do it the same way every time. Acknowledge and kindly, compassionately bring your focus back. Now I want you to move your awareness to the soles of your feet. Our feet are neglected. They carry us all day long. They hold all the weight of the body. Show them some love and observe the sensations in your feet. Perhaps wiggle your toes a little bit. Notice the sensation. Perhaps you feel the sensation of your toes against your socks or your shoes. It's imperative that when you discover all of these sensations that you don't judge them as good or bad. You just simply observe. You want to let go of any preconditioned judgments or ideas. Observe. And as you inhale, visualize your breath as it fills your body and runs all the way down your legs, all the way down into your feet. And as you exhale, visualize the breath leaving the feet, through the legs and the abdomen, and leaving the body. Repeat this step with your breaths. Be sure to observe any sensations you may or may not feel during the inhales and the exhales. And as you inhale, let's send our breath to completely fill our legs. And exhale. And repeat this step. Be sure to observe any sensations that you may feel in your ankles, your calves, your knees, your thighs. Scan each part of your leg, either simultaneously with each breath or individually with each breath. Continue to breathe in and out of your legs. Remember, if your mind begins to wander during this exercise, gently notice without judgment. Bring your mind back to the sensations in your legs. This includes if you notice any type of discomfort, pain, or stiffness that you initially always judge it as pain or label it as pain or stiffness. Try not to do that. Try not to label it. Just simply observe. Observe how the sensation may change with the rise and the fall in the breath, how it's not permanent and may shift or change from moment to moment. Now, during this next inhale, visualize your legs dissolving right before your eyes and all sensations dissolving with it. On your next inhale, visualize the breath as it fills your lower back and your pelvis. Again, observe the sensation in these areas. As you continue to breathe, shift your awareness to the other areas of your back as well. Observe any sensations you may discover.